I'm particularly worried about the camera because my experience with this particular camera, although the quality, pretty good, not that bad, though it is a photography camera that just happens to be able to make videos, it does have a habit of just turning itself off. Although I can read this all in one sitting with only a couple of stutters, there will be some cuts. So just be aware. This is chapter 14. Daily training was like a job for the children of the tribe. Many kids would train with an older male, but this would only occur twice every 4 to 5 sons. More often than not, it was fathers or friends of fathers training their kids. Orphans, which there was no shortage of, were traditionally trained by either the lead hunter personally or by someone he directly ordered to do it for him. Training for Syed was generally few and far between. Being an orphan, nobody was putting their hand up to train him, and because of Aldra's feelings towards Duran, he was often forgotten. Sometimes Poldo would give Syed the occasional lesson or pointer to help him out from his own goodwill, but he was no rising star in the tribe, and he never had much time given the nature of his relationship with Aldra. Some boys would train together on their days without a coach, but the closest thing Syed had to a friend was Jakal, Aldra's son. Jakal generally got a lot of attention from many different hunters and would be trained daily in private sessions, spending next to no time by himself. He was to be crafted into the perfect hunter one day, and everyone wanted credit for it. Despite all this attention, though, Jackal's skills were clearly lacking, and therefore lagging behind all the other trainees. Syed felt bad for his friend, but also held some pride for being better than the son of the greatest hunter alive. Syed trained alone. He was, however, fast growing. Before he had even reached the end of his first cycle, he was already as big as some of the average and smaller developed hunters. And he was talented. Already he was tackling creatures larger than himself, ones that travelled in packs like wolves, and he was fast enough to catch the sneakiest of forest critters. Because of his isolation, nobody was around to tell him what not to do, so he always wandered as far away from camp as possible till he couldn't recognize his surroundings. Then after an intense workout, he would try to find his way back. Today shouldn't have been much different. While squatting with a heavy log over his shoulders, he could hear something rustling around in the bushes behind him. All this time he spent in the forest had given him a keen ear, and excitement had begun to build within him, and made him feel stronger. Fair game had just come right to him, and without a second thought, he dropped the log and ran as fast as he could in its direction. Seeing the young boy take chase, the figure ran away as far as its legs would take it. Most of the forests in the world had never seen human touch, which led them to grow thick and messy. It was hard to run through, but not for young Syed. He could leap between trees to traverse more reliably and at greater speeds. Syed couldn't see very far in front of himself, but he knew he was catching up to whatever was below him. It took him a moment to realize that he'd already passed it. It's slow, Syed thought. It wasn't supposed to be around here. Syed dropped from the tree and fell through the leaves and branches, landing directly in the pathway of its target. He was startled and fell backwards. It wasn't an animal. It was a girl. A girl he knew. What the? I'm sorry, Syed. I didn't know anyone else was here, Alana cried. Syed scratched the back of his head. She was supposed to be back at the camp with all the other girls, learning basic skills they performed around the camp. It was highly unusual for a girl to stray this far, and Syed was very far out. I just thought maybe I could go for a bit of a hike, and I got a little lost. Please don't tell my mum. A hike? Why would you want to come out and hike? He asked. I don't know, it was silly. I should really go back to camp. Syed had never been caught before, and generally the girls and boys didn't mix very often. Even the hunters never saw their wives or helped around the camp. Some hunters liked to cook the meat they caught, but even then it was highly unusual for both genders to mix very much. Do you want me to show you how to get back? Saeed asked her. Alana's face lit up. Oh, if it's no trouble to you, I know you're training right now. Saeed looked around him. The entire forest, as big and wide as it is, there is no area that looks exactly the same as any other. Saeed walked over to a tree and pointed up the trunk at a small hive. See that? I passed that on my way in and remembered it for when I need to go back. And then when I couldn't see it anymore, I looked for something else. I think I get it, she responded, squinting at the hive's thick husk. If I walk a little further down, there are 4 little squirrel ant hills close together, and past that is a boulder that's as big as a wagon, and behind that are boar tracks, Saeed explained. I didn't notice any of that. Well, you gotta take it slow. You can't just try to remember everything at once. Try it next time you go out. And when your memory starts to have trouble remembering all the things you passed, walk back and try to spot each one. Saeed grabbed her gently by the arm and pulled her back towards the camp. He pointed out everything he passed on the way up and showed her the best way to get over the fallen trees and around the high bushes. When they found the clearing in the forest, Alana stopped and hid behind a tree. What's wrong? Asked Saeed. I can't be seen with you, sorry. Saeed looked at her funny and then started laughing. Why not? He giggled. Don't want to make it look like you got rescued by me? No, she pouted. I just don't want to get in trouble. Saeed came back and hid behind the trees with her. There are a few trees that stretch over the top of some of the tents round the backside where some of the hunters sleep. If you climb up a tree and drop down between them, nobody should notice you came out of the forest. Hunters should be all out anyway. I can't do that, she pleaded. Why not? Because I don't want to. Why not? Because it's dangerous. It is? Yes. For who? For anyone. What's pff? Ain't dangerous for me. What if you fall? Who's gonna fall? Anyone who climbs trees like that. I climb trees all the time. Didn't you see me chasing you? Shush. You can't climb a tree, can you? I so can. Do it then. I will. Alana turned around, facing the tree that she was leaning up against. There were no low-hanging branches or anywhere for her to put her hands on, and when she jumped up and wrapped her arms and legs around the trunk, Saeed laughed hysterically. There's no way you're going to get up a tree with that technique, he laughed. Alana glared at him and then dropped down to her feet. Then what would you propose? Can you jump good? What? Guess not. Alright, let's find you a better tree. Saeed walked over to another tree that had a clear split in the middle of its trunk that trailed into 2 separate trunks that leaned over in opposite directions. Saeed walked over to the base of it and knelt down. I'll give you a boost, he said. Alana walked over. She thought this particular tree looked a little odd and out of place, as if it had been planted years ago just for her to climb today. She reluctantly accepted Saeed's offer for help, and he pushed her up till she was tall enough to grab hold of the split and pull herself. Now how are you going to get up here? She asked. Saeed jumped up into a different tree, using it to propel himself into one just in front of her, leaving behind a smile. Show off, she pouted. Saeed laughed at her again. Come over to this tree, I'll help you over, he said. Alana crawled along the bent-over trunk, and as she reached its apex, Saeed grabbed her under her shoulders and pulled her under his branch. Now where? She asked. Saeed pointed up, and he started climbing higher to the next branch. When he got there, he held a hand out to her. She grabbed hold of it, and Saeed again pulled her up. He then walked across the next branch and hopped over to the other one, and she followed, accepting his help more willingly than the last time. Saeed held a finger in front of his mouth, telling her to keep quiet. She looked down and saw a few of her fellow tribespeople just ahead of her. The 2 of them navigated the trees above until they were just over the top of some of the tents. If you drop down, between these tents here, nobody will see you. Syed pointed down. There was a small group of hunter tents, which were normally bigger than everyone else's. High-ranking hunters slept in these tents, and through the day they would normally be out hunting for the evening feast. Alana inched across the branch that hung directly over the tents. "Easy," Syed whispered forcefully. Alana's branch was wobbling. If she moved slower, it wouldn't, but she was on edge and in a hurry. The branch was thick enough to hold a small person. Syed didn't risk standing on it himself, thinking it may crumble under his weight. As Alana inched towards the end of the branch, it began to crack, and before she or Syed could react in time, it snapped, and Alana fell from the tree, screeching the whole way down, drawing attention from everyone nearby. Thankfully, her fall was broken by one of the tents. For a moment, everything was silent, and Alana was looking around with a horrified look on her face, hoping nobody saw or heard her fall. She heard hysterical laughter coming from above her, and looked up to see Syed rolling around in the tree till he had no breath left. The next thing she noticed was a pair of hunters approaching. "Hey girl," one of them called out. "Cut it out! Go back to your duties." "Look at the mess you've made. They look like Percy's tent too. He ain't gonna be happy," another one said. Alana quickly stood up and ran away in embarrassment. As she ran, she turned her face back to Syed, who was still laughing, but a little softer now. "Syed, I'm sure you have better things to do," one of them yelled up the tree trunk. "Yeah," Syed laughed, running back to his training spot. On his way out, he made eye contact with Alana. She quickly turned her head away and disappeared into the lush. Syed smiled, having enjoyed himself thoroughly. He hoped they could do it again sometime. Now to see if the camera recorded any of that. Thanks for watching. Come back tomorrow to listen to another chapter. See you soon.